Right, this is called The Dawn of the Opposable Thumb. Out of the dark primordial cave, Ganthor emerged with Uanda, his slave, whom 2 nights before he had stolen away from a neighbouring tribe whose manners were fey. Ganthor the brutal had snatched up a rock, and those of the tribe who did not flee in shock were met with his fury and savagely bashed. Onto the cave walls their small brains were dashed. Then, by the hair, his prize he had taken, leaving the living submissive and shaken, and back to his own tribe he carried his mate, with a stolen impala that later he ate. Uanda quivered and trembled in dread at Ganthor's coarse people, for the lives they led were marked by brutality, cruelty and vice, and so they had lived since the age of the ice. She shielded herself from the heat of their stare, the dark eyes that burned neath dark matted hair, the covetous mouths lined with gore-blackened gums, and the grasp of opposable thumbs. In a cage made of sticks they fastened their prize, and laughed wheezing laughs at her piteous cries. Ganthor alone stood apart from the fray, to keep lurching rapists with firebrands at bay. So Uanda's first night of capture was passed, in that cold cage of sticks into which she was cast. As a rest for her head she had only the ground, and a pile of coarse grasses formed into a mound. And sleepless in capture, she met the sad morrow, brain still aboil with anger and sorrow. From her dark lonely cage she watched as these beast folk fanned a dim fire that wheezed and belched black smoke. While no warmth travelled out to soothe her chill flesh, hot lusty looks were cast twixt the mesh of sticks from which she hopelessly longed to be free. The young hunters rubbed their coarse hands in glee. And yet each time they rose and crawled near, Ganthor leapt up and met their vile sneers. As their saliva poured in glistening threads, he threw sharp flint shards at their hollow-skulled heads. It's a romantic tale, really. So Uanda came grudgingly to realise she was solely his trophy, solely his prize, and in a protean way she felt then protected within the small cage of sticks that Ganthor erected. The day passed in a haze, when the ape men returned to roasting their meats on the mean fire that burned, from the breaking of dawn to the falling of dusk, filling the cave with a flesh-crawling musk. When red sun arose on the following morn, the hunt-caller called for the hunt on his horn, and Ganthor with eagerness picked up his club to seek out a mammoth or saber-toothed cub. In his primitive heart, the hunt leader was keen to gather fine meats, hot, bloody and lean, to bring to the cage of his soon-to-be bride to draw for, his soon bride-to-be, to draw from her thanks and humility. His plan was long formed, he would mate with his prize. Her sandy blonde hair and crystalline eyes would mingle in then with his dark, dusky people, and tribes fair and swarthy soon would be equal. So he hunted the woods and the plains with his tribe, pausing at babbling brooks to imbibe, while Uanda was parched in her dry, dusky cage, where her fear turned to anger, and thence turned to rage. She snatched up the bars of the cage twixt her teeth, she wrenched them apart and set herself free. Since none had been left but the aged and frail, Uanda fought free and ran for the trail that would lead her once more to the cave of her folk, whose manners were mild and whose language she spoke. But one thought was left in her feverish brain, as she ran through the forest, blind to the pain of the lashing and slashing of branches and vines. She could not forget Ganthor, and started to pine. Yet onward she ran, she could feel she was close, but she heard then a sound, and swiftly she froze. 'Twas the horn of the hunter, blown off to the west. Uanda's resolve was then put to the test. It has a 3-act structure, so... She hid herself down, huddled face to the ground, and listened once more for that cold, fearful sound that told her captors were yet close at hand, hunting for meats under Ganthor's command. With her ear thus inclined to the westerly breeze, she heard not the hard, flesh-hungry wheeze of a far greater threat come then from the east, a saber-toothed tiger yearning to feast on the plump, juicy flesh of this Cro-Magnon maid, who was hid from the hunters and hid from their aid. In a flash the beast pounced, jaws all agape. Uanda, alas, could make no escape. The beast reached out its claws and aimed for her throat. Its taut, hungry stomach her meat would soon bloat. Despite all her courage, her wits and her guile, Uanda had not fled but more than a mile before she came face to face with this grisly end. The savage claw then did swiftly descend. But wait, the beast retreated again as Ganthor burst forth with 10 hunting men from a nearby green dale where they had been stalking a herd of young deer they had glimpsed while out walking. Ganthor raised up a sharp spear to slay the tiger before it had savaged its prey. Uanda looked on with lust-hungry eyes as the spear cut through the air with a swish and a slice. Ganthor's blade made short work of fur and of meat. The tiger's head fell with a thud at his feet. Uanda at once was no longer afraid. The hunters stood round, they roared and they brayed, as Ganthor cast down his blood-sullied spear and took his prize roughly with a grunt from the rear. The end.